Sarah Matthews had meticulously planned every detail of this morning. Her alarm chimed at 5:30 a.m., giving her ample time to press her navy blazer to perfection and review her presentation notes one final time. The position at Memorial Hospital as head of emergency logistics could be her perfect transition into civilian life, blending her military expertise with her passion for healthcare management. She adjusted her rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of herself. Her natural hair was styled professionally, and her pearl earrings, a graduation gift from her mother, added a touch of elegance to her appearance. The morning sun cast a hopeful glow across the city skyline as she navigated through the familiar streets of downtown. 7 minutes ahead of schedule, Sarah whispered to herself, glancing at the dashboard clock reading 8:23 a.m. Her interview was set for 9:00 a.m., and she carefully mapped the route to allow for typical morning delays. Years of military precision had ingrained in her the motto, "Early is on time is late." Traffic flowed smoothly until she reached the intersection of Maple and 5th Street. The light ahead turned yellow just as she approached. Sarah made a split-second assessment, something she'd done countless times during her tours of duty. The cars behind her were following closely, and a sudden stop might cause a collision. Based on her speed and distance, proceeding seemed like the safest option. The flash of red and blue lights in her rearview mirror came as a complete surprise. Sarah's heart sank, but her military training kicked in immediately. She signaled and pulled over smoothly, positioning her car safely on the shoulder. Her hands moved to the steering wheel's 10 and 2 positions, and she took a deep, centering breath. Officer James Parker approached her window, his footsteps deliberate and measured. Sarah rolled down her window, maintaining a calm and professional demeanor. "License and registration, please," he requested, his tone clipped and authoritative. "Certainly, officer," Sarah responded, her voice steady as she reached for her documents. The folder containing her interview materials slid slightly on the passenger seat, a subtle reminder of the ticking clock. It was now 8:27 a.m. Officer Parker studied her documents with what seemed like unnecessary thoroughness. "Ms. Matthews, you ran a yellow light back there. It was about to turn red." His tone carried an edge of certainty that didn't match Sarah's careful calculation of the timing. "Sir, I respectfully disagree," Sarah replied, maintaining eye contact through his mirrored sunglasses. "I made a judgment call based on safety and timing. The light was yellow when I entered the intersection." Her response was measured, drawing on years of experience reporting to superior officers. The officer's pen scratched against his ticket pad, seeming to dismiss her explanation entirely. "The fine is $400, due within 30 days. You can contest it in court if you choose." He tore the ticket from his book and handed it to her along with her documents. Sarah checked her watch as the patrol car pulled away, 8:42 a.m. Her carefully planned margin had evaporated. She pulled out her phone to call the hospital's HR department, her finger hovering over the number. In her 8 years of military service, she'd never been late for an appointment. Now, on one of the most important mornings of her civilian life, circumstances seemed determined to test her resilience. 3 days after the traffic incident, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by the evening quiet. Her laptop screen displayed an email that made her heart sink. "While your qualifications are impressive, we've decided to move forward with another candidate." The words blurred as she fought back tears of frustration, knowing her late arrival had cost her the position she'd been perfectly qualified for. The $400 traffic ticket lay beside her laptop, its bright orange color seeming to mock her careful budget planning. Sarah pulled up her banking app, the numbers telling a story of disciplined saving and careful choices. Her emergency fund had taken a hit last month when her daughter Lisa's laptop died right before midterms. Now, this unexpected fine threatened to disrupt her carefully balanced finances. She opened her desk drawer, pushing aside papers to reach for her old leather box. Inside, her distinguished service medal caught the light from her desk lamp, bringing back memories of the ceremony in Afghanistan. Colonel Richard's words echoed in her mind. Lieutenant Matthews' quick thinking and exceptional logistics management saved 17 lives during the hospital siege. That had been one of her proudest moments. Yet here she sat, struggling with a traffic fine that seemed to question her judgment. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "Mom, my campus interview went great. The internship could cover half of next semester's books." The message brought a smile to Sarah's face, reminding her of why every challenge was worth facing. She'd served her country proudly for 8 years, completed her master's degree while raising Lisa alone, and she wasn't about to let a traffic ticket derail their progress. Her eyes drifted to the wall calendar where she'd circled next Thursday's court date in red. Between now and then, she had 2 more job interviews lined up. This time, she'd leave 2 hours early if necessary. The military had taught her to adapt and overcome, and civilian life was just another mission to master. Standing up to stretch, Sarah caught her reflection in the window. She was still wearing her interview suit from earlier that day. Another position she was overqualified for, but at least this interviewer had been impressed. The salary wouldn't match what she'd been offered at Memorial Hospital, but it could be a stepping stone. A soft ding from her laptop announced another email. Sarah expected another rejection, but instead found a message from her old commanding officer. "Lieutenant, heard you're in the job market. My brother's running operations at Central Medical. Interested in having your resume." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she considered the offer. She'd been determined to secure a position on her own merit, but perhaps it was time to leverage her network. The evening light faded as Sarah began crafting her response. Before she could finish, her eyes landed on the ticket again. The officer's dismissive attitude had reminded her of other moments in her life when people had underestimated her. Each time, she'd proven them wrong through actions rather than arguments. Sarah opened a fresh document and began preparing her court defense. She listed the exact timing of the yellow light, the safety considerations of her decision, and her spotless driving record. If she approached this challenge with the same precision she'd used in military operations, she could turn this setback into another obstacle overcome. As she worked, her Distinguished Service Medal gleamed quietly in its box, a reminder that true strength often lies in facing small battles with the same dignity as the large ones. The municipal courthouse bustled with morning activity as Sarah took her seat in the third row. She'd arrived 45 minutes early, a habit ingrained from countless military briefings. The wooden bench was hard and uncomfortable, but her posture remained perfect as she observed the proceedings before her case. Judge William Henderson commanded his courtroom with unwavering authority. His silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses gave him a distinguished appearance, but there was a sharpness in his eyes that missed nothing. Sarah watched as he handled case after case, his decisions swift and decisive. "Next case," Judge Henderson called out, his voice carrying through the courtroom. A young man in baggy jeans shuffled forward, hands in his pockets. "Remove your hands from your pockets and address the court properly," the judge snapped. The young man complied, but his muttered explanation about a parking ticket earned him an increased fine for disrespecting the court. Sarah noticed a pattern in the judge's responses. Those who arrived in business attire and spoke eloquently often received reduced fines or payment plans. Others, despite valid explanations, faced the full weight of their citations. She made mental notes, applying the same analytical skills she'd used when assessing field situations. A slight commotion at the courthouse entrance drew her attention. A mother struggled with a crying toddler, attempting to keep her court documents organized while soothing the child. Without hesitation, Sarah moved to help, steadying the woman's files and offering a tissue from her purse. The bailiff noticed her gesture, and Sarah caught a slight nod of approval. "Traffic violation, Officer Parker," the court clerk announced, and Sarah recognized the officer who had ticketed her entering the courtroom. He carried himself with the same rigid authority as before, taking his place near the judge's bench. Sarah observed his interaction with Judge Henderson, the familiar nod between them suggesting a long-standing professional relationship. The cases continued, and Sarah used the time to refine her approach. She'd seen 6 traffic violations presented before the judge. Those who argued aggressively failed. Those who appeared unprepared faced similar fates. But there had been one success, a retired teacher who presented her case with calm dignity and clear evidence. The clock on the wall ticked steadily toward her scheduled time. Sarah reviewed her documentation one final time. Her clean driving record, a diagram of the intersection showing the yellow light timing, and her carefully prepared statement. Each item was arranged in the order she might need them, just as she'd organized medical supplies for rapid access in field hospitals. A case involving a disputed red light violation captured her full attention. Judge Henderson requested the traffic camera footage, watching it with intense scrutiny. "The court cannot make assumptions," he declared, reviewing the evidence frame by frame. "We must deal in facts, not impressions." His words gave Sarah hope. Perhaps her own careful preparation would find appreciation. The bailiff, a tall man with military bearing, began making his way down the aisle, checking documentation for the remaining cases. When he reached Sarah, his eyes flickered with recognition at her perfect posture and the precise organization of her papers. "Former service," he whispered as he verified her citation number. Sarah nodded once, maintaining her focus on the proceedings. The bailiff made a small notation on his clipboard before moving on. "Sarah Matthews," the clerk finally called. Sarah gathered her materials, rising with the same poise she'd maintained through countless military reviews. As she approached the podium, she felt the weight of the courtroom's attention, but her steps were steady. Years of military service had taught her that sometimes the most important battles were fought not with weapons, but with truth and dignity. Judge Henderson barely glanced up as Sarah approached the podium, his pen moving across paperwork with practiced efficiency. The morning sunlight streaming through the high courthouse windows cast harsh shadows across his face, deepening the lines of authority etched there over years on the bench. "Ms. Matthews," he began, his tone carrying the same detachment she'd observed in previous cases, "you're contesting a citation for running a yellow light. Officer Parker is one of our most experienced traffic officers. What makes you think your judgment supersedes his professional assessment?" Sarah stood straight, her voice clear and measured. "Your Honor, my decision at that intersection was based on several critical factors." She reached for her prepared documentation, but the judge held up his hand, cutting her off. "Let's start with the basics," he interrupted, scanning the citation. "Where were you headed in such a hurry that you couldn't wait for the next light cycle?" His question carried an edge of presumption that made Sarah's heart beat faster, though her expression remained composed. "I was en route to a job interview, Your Honor," Sarah replied, maintaining eye contact. "However, my destination didn't influence my decision-making. Safety was my primary concern." Judge Henderson's eyebrows rose slightly. "A job interview." He glanced at Officer Parker, who stood at attention near the bench. And this interview was so important that basic traffic laws became optional. The courtroom fell silent, the weight of the judge's skepticism hanging in the air. Sarah felt the familiar surge of adrenaline she'd known in high-pressure military situations, but her response remained controlled. "No, sir. Safety is never optional. I made a tactical decision based on vehicle spacing, speed, and road conditions." "Tactical." The judge's tone sharpened. "This was a traffic light, Ms. Matthews, not a military operation." A few muffled chuckles echoed from the gallery, but Sarah didn't flinch. She opened her folder, determined to present her evidence despite the judge's dismissive attitude. "Your Honor, I've prepared a detailed analysis of the intersection's timing sequence. The yellow light duration is actually shorter than the Department of Transportation's recommended minimum for an intersection of this size and speed limit." Judge Henderson leaned back, his expression a mixture of impatience and mild amusement. "Ms. Matthews, I've heard every possible excuse in this courtroom. Each person thinks their case is special, their circumstances unique. What makes your situation any different?" Sarah's training kicked in. The same training that had kept her calm during midnight medical evacuations and supply chain crisis. "Sir, I'm not offering excuses. I'm presenting facts. My driving record shows no previous violations, and my dashboard camera footage clearly shows the shortened yellow light timing. The judge's pen tapped against his desk, a steady rhythm that matched the ticking of the courtroom clock. Dashboard camera footage. His tone suggested this detail had caught his attention, though his expression remained stern. Most people don't come this prepared for a simple traffic hearing. Preparation and attention to detail are fundamental to everything I do. Your Honor, Sarah responded, reaching for her ID card along with the video evidence. As she lifted the items from her folder, a metallic glint caught the morning sunlight, her military ID sliding partially into view. The bailiff, who had been standing quietly at attention, shifted slightly, his eyes catching the familiar shape and color of the card. In that moment, as Sarah began to present her evidence, the atmosphere in the courtroom subtly changed, though Judge Henderson hadn't yet noticed the silent revelation about to unfold before him. The military ID card caught the edge of Sarah's folder, sliding across the polished wooden surface of the judge's bench with a soft whisper. The morning sunlight streaming through the courthouse windows caught its holographic surface, creating a familiar shimmer that any service member would recognize instantly. The bailiff, James Wilson, straightened his posture even further. 23 years as a Marine had taught him to recognize that distinct shade of blue-green in an instant. His movement, though subtle, drew the attention of Officer Parker, who had served 4 years in the Air Force before joining the police force. Your Honor, the bailiff spoke, his voice carrying the quiet authority of his former rank. The defendant's credentials might be relevant to her assessment of the traffic situation. His eyes met Sarah's with the unspoken understanding that comes from shared service. Judge Henderson reached for the ID card, his fingers brushing against its smooth surface. His expression shifted as he read the details. Lieutenant Sarah Matthews, United States Army Medical Corps. His eyes moved from the card to Sarah's face, seeing her clearly for the first time since she'd entered his courtroom. Lieutenant Matthews, he said, his tone markedly different. You served at Camp Victory. The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken understanding. The same camp where 3 medical units have been crucial in saving hundreds of lives during Operation Desert Shield. Yes, Your Honor, Sarah replied, her voice steady. I served as head of medical logistics for the 47th Combat Support Hospital. We coordinated emergency medical supplies across 3 provinces. She didn't add that her unit had maintained a 98% efficiency rating under enemy fire. Her record spoke for itself. The atmosphere in the courtroom had transformed. Judge Henderson set down his pen, removing his glasses with deliberate care. The 47th CSH, he mused, recognition flickering across his features. You were there during the mass casualty incident in 2019. Sarah nodded once, memories of that chaotic night flooding back. We received 17 critically wounded soldiers in less than 30 minutes. Our supply chain management system helped ensure every operating room had exactly what they needed when they needed it. Officer Parker shifted his stance, his own military training evident in his changed demeanor. The dismissive attitude he'd shown during the traffic stop had vanished, replaced by the respect one service member holds for another. Your Honor, Sarah continued, seizing the moment to return to her case. The same analytical skills I used to coordinate emergency medical responses informed my decision at that intersection. The yellow light timing of 3.2 seconds is significantly shorter than the recommended 4.5 seconds for an intersection of that size and speed limit. My dashboard camera footage confirms this. Judge Henderson studied the military ID card for another moment before returning it to Sarah. His entire bearing had shifted. The stern, dismissive judge replaced by someone who understood the weight of split-second decisions made under pressure. The gallery watched in silence as Sarah produced her evidence, now holding the judge's full attention. Among the observers, a young journalism student furiously took notes, recognizing that she was witnessing something more significant than a simple traffic court proceeding. Lieutenant Matthews, Judge Henderson said, his voice carrying a new note of respect. Please present your complete analysis of the situation." He settled back in his chair, prepared to listen. Really listen. To someone whose training and experience might just match his own understanding of duty and judgment. Judge Henderson leaned forward, his elbows resting on the polished bench as Sarah began her detailed presentation. His earlier impatience had vanished, replaced by the focused attention of someone who recognized expertise when he saw it. "The intersection of Maple and Fifth," Sarah explained, presenting a diagram, "has unique characteristics that influenced my decision-making that morning." Her fingers traced the traffic patterns with precision. "There were 3 vehicles behind me, the closest maintaining an unsafe following distance. A sudden stop would have risked a rear-end collision. Similar to a convoy situation," the judge observed, surprising the courtroom with his insight. "When the lead vehicle's decision affects the entire line." His understanding of military protocols was evident in his tone. Sarah nodded, appreciating his grasp of the parallel. "In medical logistics, we developed a system called Quick Response Assessment. Every decision required evaluating multiple factors in seconds." She pulled out another document. "I applied the same methodology at the intersection." The judge studied her analysis, noting the precise timing measurements and safety calculations. "Your time in the service," he began, genuine curiosity in his voice. "Tell me more about your role in medical logistics." "I coordinated supply chains for 3 forward operating bases," Sarah explained. "We maintained critical medical supplies in extreme conditions, often under threat." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "One night, we received word of an incoming mass casualty event. 2 helicopters were bringing in wounded soldiers, but our primary route for blood supplies was compromised." The courtroom had fallen completely silent. Even Officer Parker stood transfixed, his own military experience helping him understand the gravity of such a situation. "We had 10 minutes to establish an alternate supply route," Sarah continued. "I made the call to redirect our convoy through a supposedly longer path, but my analysis showed it was actually more efficient. That decision saved crucial minutes, and every one of those soldiers survived." Judge Henderson removed his glasses, cleaning them thoughtfully. "Quick decisions under pressure, where lives hang in the balance," he mused. "That's quite different from my initial impression of your case." His admission carried a note of self-reflection. "Your Honor," Sarah said, returning to her traffic citation, "I'm not asking for special treatment because of my service. I'm demonstrating that my decision at that intersection wasn't reckless or careless. It was a calculated response to the situation at hand." The judge picked up her traffic camera footage, examining it with new eyes. "You mentioned something about the yellow light timing being shorter than recommended standards." His question invited her to elaborate, showing genuine interest in her technical analysis. Sarah presented her final piece of evidence, a detailed comparison of the intersection's timing with Department of Transportation guidelines. "The standard recommendation for an intersection of this size and speed limit is 4.5 seconds. The actual timing is 3.2 seconds, creating a potential safety hazard." Judge Henderson's expression shifted as he processed this information, his years of military service clearly influencing his understanding of systematic analysis. The same precision he'd once demanded from his own unit was evident in every aspect of Sarah's presentation. "Lieutenant Matthews," he said, using her military title with respect, "I believe you've given this court something significant to consider, beyond just your traffic citation." His words carried the weight of someone who recognized that sometimes the most powerful revelations come from unexpected places. Judge Henderson straightened in his chair, a decision crystallizing in his mind. The morning light had shifted, casting softer shadows across the courtroom as he prepared to speak. The gallery leaned forward, sensing the weight of the moment. "Before I make my ruling," he began, his voice carrying a new warmth, "I want to address something larger than a traffic citation." He turned his attention to Officer Parker. "Officer, would you say your assessment of the situation that morning was complete?" Officer Parker stood at attention, his military bearing returning naturally. "Your Honor, I followed standard protocol, but..." He paused, glancing at Sarah. "I may have missed some crucial context in my assessment." "Context," Judge Henderson repeated thoughtfully. "Lieutenant Matthews has presented us with something remarkable today. Not just a defense of her actions, but a masterclass in thorough analysis." He lifted the traffic camera footage. "This evidence suggests our intersection timing system needs immediate review." Sarah remained standing quietly, her posture perfect as the judge continued. The bailiff had moved closer to the bench, his own interest evident in his attentive stance. "This court," Judge Henderson declared, his voice filling the room, "has a duty to examine evidence thoroughly and without preconception." He turned to face the gallery directly. "Too often, we allow our initial impressions to cloud our judgment. Lieutenant Matthews' presentation today reminds us that expertise and excellence can appear in forms we might not initially recognize." He picked up his gavel but didn't bring it down. "The citation is dismissed," he stated firmly. "But more importantly, I'm ordering an immediate review of the traffic light timing at Maple and 5th. Lieutenant Matthews' analysis indicates a potential public safety issue that requires attention." Sarah's shoulders relaxed slightly, the first break in her perfect posture since entering the courtroom. "Thank you, Your Honor," she said simply. But Judge Henderson wasn't finished. "Furthermore," he continued, setting down his gavel, "I would like to extend an apology." The word hung in the air, unusual in its rarity from the bench. "This court initially failed to give your explanation the attention it deserved. That was an oversight I intend to correct." He turned to his clerk. "Please note in the record that Lieutenant Matthews' analysis of the intersection should be forwarded to the Department of Transportation." Looking back at Sarah, he added, "Your attention to detail and systematic approach to problem solving shouldn't just dismiss a citation. It should help prevent future incidents." The young journalism student in the gallery was now typing frantically on her phone, recognizing the broader implications of what she was witnessing. This wasn't just about a traffic ticket anymore. "Lieutenant," Judge Henderson said, his tone now collegial, "would you be willing to share your quick response assessment methodology with our traffic court? I believe your military experience offers valuable insights we could apply to our civilian procedures." Sarah nodded, her professional demeanor softening slightly. "I would be honored, Your Honor. The principles of careful analysis and thorough evaluation apply equally well in civilian life." The judge picked up his gavel once more. "Then let the record show that today's proceedings have revealed not just the facts of a single case, but an opportunity to improve our system of justice." The gavel fell with a sharp crack, but instead of an ending, it felt more like a beginning. 3 months after her court appearance, Sarah stood at the podium of the Municipal Training Center, addressing a room full of traffic court judges and law enforcement officers. Her presentation slides showed the implementation of her quick response assessment system, now adapted for civilian traffic evaluation. "When we synthesize military precision with civilian needs," she explained, clicking to the next slide, "we create more efficient and fair systems." The audience, including Judge Henderson in the front row, nodded in appreciation. The intersection at Maple and 5th had become a case study in improvement through detailed analysis. The Department of Transportation had not only adjusted the yellow light timing, but had initiated a citywide review of traffic signals. Sarah's methodology had revealed similar timing issues at 12 other intersections, leading to systematic updates that improved traffic flow and reduced accidents by 23%. During the break, Judge Henderson approached her with a familiar face in tow. "Lieutenant Matthews," he said warmly, "I believe you know Dr. Richardson from Memorial Hospital." Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the hospital administrator who had interviewed her months ago. "Your analysis of our traffic systems impressed me," Dr. Richardson said, extending his hand. "But what really caught my attention was how you implemented the changes. We need that kind of systematic thinking in our emergency response protocols." Sarah thought back to that morning when she'd been rushing to her interview, never imagining that a traffic ticket would lead her exactly where she needed to be. Memorial Hospital had created a new position, Director of Emergency Response Systems, tailored to her unique combination of military logistics experience and civilian analysis skills. The young journalism student who had witnessed her court appearance had written an article that went viral. Military Precision Meets Civilian Justice: How One Traffic Stop Changed a City. The story had sparked discussions about the value of military experience in civilian sectors and the importance of looking beyond first impressions. Officer Parker had become an advocate for change within the police department, helping implement new training protocols that incorporated Sarah's assessment methods. The day she spoke at the police academy, he introduced her with genuine respect, emphasizing how one encounter had transformed his approach to traffic enforcement. Back at home that evening, Sarah added the final touches to her presentation for tomorrow's hospital board meeting. Her daughter Lisa, home from college for the weekend, sat nearby working on her own projects. "Mom," Lisa said, looking up from her laptop, "my professor used your case study in our public policy class today." Sarah smiled, remembering the string of events that had led to this moment. Her military ID card, framed alongside her new hospital credentials, caught the evening light. Judge Henderson had been right. Sometimes the most powerful changes come from unexpected challenges. Her phone buzzed with a text from the bailiff, James Wilson. "Next week's judicial training session is full. Your story is making waves." Sarah had never sought to create systemic change when she walked into that courtroom, but her commitment to excellence and dignity had rippled out in ways she never expected. As she reviewed her hospital protocols one last time before bed, Sarah reflected on how a potential setback had become a catalyst for positive change. Her military training had taught her that leadership sometimes means standing firm in your truth, even when others doubt you. Now that lesson was helping build bridges between military precision and civilian needs, one system at a time.